Ja, hallo, herzlich willkommen zu unserem Webinar, das Energy Sector Management Assistance Program ESMAP. Mein Name ist Theresa Weiß. Ich freue mich sehr, Sie heute zu begrüßen. Wir hatten eingangs ein paar technische Probleme, deswegen beginnen wir jetzt mit etwas Verspätung. Aber das ist ja manchmal auch ganz gut, weil sich dann auch die Teilnehmer noch dazuschalten können. Wir haben heute bei unserem Webinar, das ist ein Webinar, das in 3 Teilen stattfinden wird, also nicht das heutige Webinar, aber wir haben eine 3-teilige Webinarserie vorbereitet, die wir jetzt vor dem Sommer präsentieren werden, und es geht um Weltbankprogramme, die von Österreich aus unterstützt werden. Wir kooperieren mit dem Bundesministerium für Finanzen bei diesen Webinaren, und Sie sehen jetzt hier unten die Logos der 3 Programme, die wir Ihnen in den nächsten Monaten vorstellen werden. Heute ist Energie unser Fokus und das ESMAP-Programm, das von der Weltbank verwaltet wird. Und ESMAP ist eine Partnerschaft für nachhaltige Energie zwischen der Weltbank und 24 Partnern. Ein Partner davon ist eben Österreich. Und wir haben deshalb heute 2 Sprecherinnen eingeladen, jemanden vom Finanzministerium und dann jemanden von der Weltbank. Wir haben am Ende des Webinars Zeit für Ihre Fragen. Die können Sie über die Chat-Funktion stellen, und dann werden wir sie beantworten nach den Präsentationen. Und die Unterlagen von heute werden Ihnen in Kürze in den nächsten Tagen übermittelt werden. Gut, und so freue ich mich jetzt schon, meine Kollegin vom Bundesministerium für Finanzen vorstellen zu können, Sina Garcia, die früher selbst auch einmal bei der Weltbank hier war. Ich kann mich noch gut erinnern an unsere Zusammenarbeit. Und ich würde Sie bitten, dass sie sich jetzt dazu schaltet und uns über die Zusammenarbeit vom BMF, Bundesministerium für Finanzen, und der Weltbankgruppe mehr erzählt.
Ja, guten Tag, herzlichen Dank für die Einladung, hier auch präsentieren zu können seitens des BMF. Ich möchte Ihnen kurz die Zusammenarbeit vom BMF mit der Weltbankgruppe illustrieren. Diese Illustration ist sogar relevant eigentlich für alle Trust Fund Programme, alle Programme, die wir jetzt mit der Weltbank unternehmen, unter anderem eben das ESMAP-Programm. Und gleich zu Beginn möchte ich Ihnen zeigen, wie wir agieren mit den internationalen Finanzinstitutionen, unter anderem eben der Weltbank. Wie Sie sehen, sind wir in den Institutionen durch den Bundesminister für Finanzen für Österreich vertreten. Die Institutionen, die internationalen Finanzinstitutionen, in denen Österreich teilnimmt, ist unter anderem die Weltbankgruppe, aber wir haben eben auch regionale Entwicklungsbanken, wie zum Beispiel die Asiatische Entwicklungsbank oder die Europäische Entwicklungsbank. Und dann gibt es auch weitere europäische Finanzinstitutionen, die ebenfalls auf der Slide gelistet sind, und zusätzliche Institutionen sind ziemlich spezialisiert, wie zum Beispiel der EFAD, der für landwirtschaftliche Entwicklung zuständig ist, oder eben die globale Umweltfazilität GEF. Heute geht es eben um ein Programm, das wir seitens der Weltbankgruppe eben im Spezifischen bei der IBRD, der Internationalen Bank für Wiederaufbau und Entwicklung, unterstützen. Österreich ist hier Mitglied seit 1948. Und bei der Weltbankgruppe handelt es sich eben, wie der Name schon sagt, um eine Gruppe. Da sind auch andere Institutionen noch dabei. Die IBRD vergibt Kredite im zinsnahen Bereich, wohingegen die IDA, die Internationale Entwicklungsorganisation, eher für zinsgestützte Kreditvergaben zuständig ist. Der IFC ist eher die Privatsektorfunktion, übernimmt die Privatsektorfunktion wie MIGA auch. In all diesen Gremien ist der Finanzminister in der Rolle als Eigentümervertreter der Republik Österreich vertreten. Um jetzt ein bisschen ins Detail zu gehen, wie die Governance der Weltbank aussieht: Es gibt eben das Board of Governors, wo Österreich durch den HBM, den Herrn Bundesminister für Finanzen, vertreten ist. Das Board of Governors übersieht im Endeffekt ist das große und oberste Entscheidungs- und Aufsichtsgremium der Weltbankgruppe. Unter ihm ist eben das Board of Executive Directors. Österreich ist dort stets vertreten, entweder durch einen Exekutivdirektor, durch einen stellvertretenden Exekutivdirektor oder eben durch einen Advisor. Derzeit ist Österreich im Board vertreten durch eine Advisorin, Frau Agnes Trimmel. Diese Funktion habe ich, wie die Theresa schon erwähnt hat, vor gut 10 Jahren ausgeführt. Das Board of Executive Directors überwacht im Endeffekt das tägliche Geschäft der Bank, und das Management von der Weltbank wird eben vom Präsidenten David Malpass überwacht. Und Und hier, ich wollte noch kurz erwähnen, dass eben Österreich mit seinem Stimmanteil nicht der größte Anteilseigner ist natürlich, aber wir haben uns zusammengetan mit 9 anderen Ländern und in dieser Stimmrechtsgruppe sind wir einer der größten vertreten in der Bank. Ich möchte jetzt kurz noch sprechen über die Motivation, warum wir uns als Finanzministerium bei den internationalen Finanzinstitutionen, insbesondere Weltbankgruppe, engagieren. Es ist natürlich Teil der Global Governance, dass wir die multilaterale Entwicklungszusammenarbeit unterstützen möchten. Durch diese Funktion können wir eben Einfluss auf die Politiken, die Strategien und Investitionen der IFIs nehmen. Andererseits können wir dadurch mit dem österreichischen Beitrag viel, viel mehr hebeln und viel mehr Mittel in die Entwicklungsländer und für unsere Schwerpunktbereiche auch umsetzen. Zu den Schwerpunktbereichen komme ich dann noch ein bisschen später. Weiters ist es für uns natürlich relevant, weil die IFIs einer der effizientesten und effektivsten Institutionen sind, um Entwicklungsimpakte zu erzielen. Effizient, weil wir dadurch, dass wir Ressourcen bündeln können, viel geringere Verwaltungskosten haben und die effektivsten, weil wir natürlich mit diesen Institutionen auch einen starken Fokus auf Resultate legen können. Weiters verfolgen wir eben das Ziel der internationalen Koordination und der Verbesserung der Wirksamkeit der internationalen EZA. Wir können hier gemeinsam mit anderen Gebern einem Ziel entgegenwirken. Das Einbringen der österreichischen Anliegen und Interessen ist natürlich auch eines der Motivationsfaktoren. Und wir möchten natürlich auch die Institutionen darauf hinweisen, dass wir österreichisches Know-how und Know-how-Träger haben und dass wir interessante Wirtschaftspartner anbieten können. Und wir sind auch da, um österreichische Stakeholder zu vernetzen. Unsere Vertreterinnen oder Vertreter im Board sind da hier auch für ihre Anliegen zuständig und haben auch eine offene Tür und heißen auch gerne Firmen willkommen. Klima ist derzeit ein wichtiger Faktor und da spielt auch das ESMAP-Programm eine größere Rolle. Und der Beitrag zur Klimafinanzierung seitens der Weltbank beträgt hier 26 Milliarden, wie Sie sehen können, im Jahr 2021 und im Vorjahr waren es 21,4 Milliarden Dollar. Unsere Schwerpunktthemen noch kurz aufgezeigt. Entschuldigung, jetzt springe ich herum. Wir haben 4 Schwerpunktsektoren in der IFI-Strategie des Bundesministeriums für Finanzen definiert. Und die umfassen nachhaltige Energie- und Klimaschutz, worunter auch Energie und das ESMAP-Programm fallen würden. Wir haben aber auch Wasser- und Siedlungshygiene als eines unserer Schwerpunktsektoren definiert. Dazu kommt noch der Privatsektor und Finanzsektorentwicklung. Und zuletzt haben wir auch nachhaltige urbane Entwicklung und Konnektivität hinzugefügt. Nachhaltige Energie- und Klimaschutz, Wasser- und Siedlungshygiene sind natürlich Themen, die wir seit sehr langem schon betreuen, wo wir auch deswegen diese Sektoren ausgewählt haben, weil das Schwerpunktsektoren unserer österreichischen Wirtschaft sind. Ich möchte Ihnen zu gutem Schluss noch ein paar Beispiele nennen von unserer programmatischen Zusammenarbeit mit der Weltbank. Das eine ist eben das Energy Sector Management Assessment Program, das heute auch vorgestellt wird durch unseren Kollegen bei der Weltbank. Andererseits unterstützt das BMF auch die Global Facility for Disaster Reduction and Recovery. Hierzu wird es auch ein Webinar im Reihe dieser Serie geben. Darunter fällt auch das City Resilience Program. Das GFDRR widmet sich eben dem Katastrophenschutz und Krisenmanagement generell. Das City Resilience Programm stellt darauf ab, eher Städte resilient gegenüber Klimaschutzmaßnahmen und Katastrophen zu machen. Ein weiteres Programm, das auch in dieser Webinarserie vorgestellt wird, ist das Global Water Security and Sanitation Program. Das ist ein langjähriges Programm, das schon bereits seit den 90er Jahren auch von BMF unterstützt wird. Es dient generell eben Wasser- und Siedlungshygiene und Sanitation in den Entwicklungsländern voranzutreiben. Unter diesem Programm befindet sich auch ein Danube Water Program, das von Wien aus gesteuert wird, wo es insbesondere um Wasserwerke geht, die sich unter anderem vernetzen und deren Effizienz auch gesteigert werden soll. Ein weiteres Programm, das ich noch kurz erwähnen möchte, ist unser Mobility and Logistics Trust Fund, MOLO, den wir auch mit der Weltbank unterstützen. Hier geht es insbesondere um den Bahnsektor und da legen wir einen größeren Fokus auf Nachhaltigkeit und Asset Management unter anderem. Ich hoffe, dass dies Ihnen einen kurzen Überblick über unsere Aktivitäten gegeben hat und stehe Ihnen sehr gerne für Fragen zur Verfügung.
Ja, herzlichen Dank, Sina Garcia, für diese Einführung ins BMF. Sie haben es auch gerade gehört, Sina Garcia wird uns dann auch später noch zur Verfügung stehen, wenn wir ganz am Ende nach unserer nächsten Hauptpräsentation dann die Fragen und Antwort-Session haben. Und jetzt geht's weiter in English. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you our main speaker for today, Samir Shukla, and I invite him to turn on his camera if this is possible. Great. We see you're very happy to have you here join our webinar today. Samir is actually on business travel, so it was it's a whole new setup for us, but I'm super happy that you're able to make yourself available even though you're traveling at the moment. So thank you so much to be with us today. Samir is an expert in energy. Some of you, I don't know, might know him. He's been the practice manager for the Europe and Central Asia region. So he definitely knows some of the companies who might have joined us today in this webinar. And he will talk about the Energy Sector Management Assistance Program and, you know, tell us everything that we need and hope to know about this. So thank you so much, Samir, and the floor is yours.
Lisa, thank you very, very much. It's really my honor, my privilege to be here with the Austrian government's support. ESMAP has actually grown quite a bit, and so we are very grateful for this partnership. So it really is a pleasure to be here, and just to repay a little bit the support that we get from Austria among other partners. So let me start. I'll try and explain to you how ESMAP is structured, how it works, what its main priorities are, and you know, some of the ways in which it delivers support. And then towards the end, I'll also try and touch upon how we interact with the private sector, and how, if there is any interest, how you could reach out to us and how we could take our partnership further. So ESMAP is one of the old. Oh, and before I start, I should also thank Sina from BMF for a very nice introduction, and I look forward to meeting you all at some point. So ESMAP is one of the oldest trust funds that exist in the bank group. It's a multi-donor trust fund. As you can see on the right side, there are a lot of partners, a lot of donors, and it is housed in the World Bank. And I'll touch upon a little later as to how that gives us a unique sort of advantage and a unique effectiveness. It's ESMAP is an energy sector fund, of course, although it works quite closely with other parts of the World Bank: water, agriculture, health, and of course the climate change global practice. But it's situated in the Energy and Extractives global practice of the World Bank, and the global director for Energy and Extractives chairs the annual meeting of consultative group. Actually, the consultative group is going to meet next week in a hybrid fashion. Several donor partners are going to come to the US, to Washington, DC. And we are currently in the middle of our fiscal year 2021 to 24 business plan. We have a 4-year planning cycle. So we are actually right now in the midterm. We are finishing our midterm review, and that's one of the things that we will discuss with our partners next week. This program, this 4-year plan is a very, very ambitious one. It's a scale up of at least three or four times compared to the previous business plan set for years 17 to 20. And so far we have raised about 360 million from various partners, and this is sort of normal for the first 2 years of any business plan cycle. And we will discuss plans of further fundraising with our partners next week. I'm sorry, there's a bit of a lag on my end, but I hope you can still hear me and see me. So in terms of governance, ESMAP is run by a manager who has a team, currently the team of about 55 staff. And as I said earlier, we're embedded in the World Bank's Energy and Extractives global practice. So we work across. And just as an example, I am currently on a World Bank team visit to Ghana. So this is one way in which ESMAP also leverages skills and, of course, develops deeper partnerships with our clients and with the World Bank itself. We also have a joint ESMAP energy climate finance team, which meets regularly to discuss partnerships and how to collaborate, not just for fundraising but for other activities as well. And this has been a very effective way of mainstreaming climate into energy and also increasing awareness about energy in the climate finance group. And as I said, we have a consultative group that oversees all the work we do. And we also have a technical advisory group, of experts who are active globally, who have experience across the world. And so they meet regularly with us to help us improve our effectiveness. They also report to the consultative group with their advice. And so we had a technical advisory group meeting, set of meetings last month. And so that will also be reported to the consultative group. As I said, we have a 4-year business cycle, and donors essentially provide guidance through these meetings and, of course, through periodic interactions. And ESMAP is one of the trust funds which is empowered to essentially implement the business plan with our own sort of authorization for grants and so on. So that gives us agility as well. It enables us to respond to needs faster. So that's one of the unique features of the way ESMAP is governed. And of course, everything that ESMAP finances or supports follows the World Bank Group's safeguards, procurement, fiduciary policies. And so, that gives us a measure of comfort as well, that everything that we do is done properly along the lines of the World Bank Group's own policies. And we do, of course, we do a lot of work. I'll come back to it of various kinds. I'll come back to it later. But we have essentially 3 main buckets, if you will. We do some work of our own, where we do, let's say, research, analytical work, policy work of a global, let's say, emphasis. And then we, of course, a big chunk of our work is done through the World Bank Group and their partnership in each country or each sub-region. And then we also have started supporting recipient executives. So client governments, their utilities, their entities also can use ESMAP funds for their work. So in that case, then the money goes to these client entities and they manage the execution. We have our own sort of monitoring and evaluation. It's a very elaborate system, and we then use that to report, to of course monitor our own work, but then also to report to our donor groups. And we get, in each business cycle, in each business plan cycle, we have at least one external evaluation. This is a tongue-in-cheek, let's say, picture, but it essentially is sort of the way ESMAP operates. We like to think that we influence not just World Bank Group policy, but also the policies of World Bank Group clients, which are all of the countries that you can think of across the globe. And this is really one really unique factor about ESMAP, and we are able to leverage the amount of money that we get, which is a lot of money, and yet in the global scheme of things, it is a limited pool. But we are able to leverage that through the much larger resources that the World Bank Group has, and I'll touch upon that in a little bit again. This is sort of the architecture of the current business plan. We have don't get too overwhelmed by the minutiae, but essentially we have 6 programs, 6 large flagship programs that cover the entire range of the energy, let's say, value chain. And these 6 programs are essentially tailored to meeting 2 large objectives, which are also mutually complementary. The SDG 7, which all of you are aware of, achieving universal energy access, modern energy access by 2030, and then decarbonization of the energy sector. As we all know, energy is the largest contributor to climate change, and so that this has become a big major priority for ESMAP. And so all our programs are essentially targeted towards these two objectives. As you can see, we have clean cooking, we have electricity access, so at the consumer end, the household end of the value chain. Renewable energy has always been a very big emphasis, and of course in each business plan we let's say advance the ambition a little bit more. We have within the renewable energy program, we have a very successful energy storage partnership. We also, of course, support a lot of the ongoing renewable technologies, but also innovative technologies such as offshore wind, floating solar, so distributed solar. So we do support those engagements. And again, we'll talk about that in a bit. Another facility that actually the Austrian government has sponsored quite closely and has helped us set up is the hydropower development facility. I will touch upon it later. It's a very important facility in my mind, and we pay a lot of sort of importance to hydropower. And then you see the accelerating decarbonization window, which covers a large range of efforts, all aimed at essentially reducing and removing carbon footprint of various energy-related activities. There's the zero carbon public sector, industrial decarbonization, efficient and clean cooling. As you know, cooling is becoming a major source of emissions and needs to be clean. Many countries in Europe, for instance, have seen really fast increasing demand for cooling. So that's become a big focus area for us. Geothermal, but again, in geothermal, we're focusing a lot on direct use in addition to power generation, and then of course green hydrogen. And I'll talk about green hydrogen in a little bit again. We feel that hydrogen, and of course this is now widely accepted, that hydrogen and green hydrogen is already a key element of the decarbonization of the energy sector, and is moving very fast. And we think that we have a really large role to play. We can, with the bank and with all our partners, we feel that we are uniquely placed. And so we have a green hydrogen program right now, and we want to expand it as much as we can. I'll come back to it in a little bit. And then at the bottom you see foundations. These are not less important. They are perhaps more important than everything else, but they are essentially the bedrock of everything we do. So they cut across all of these programs, and that's why they're there. There's the foundations for the energy transition. One of the most important windows we have. That's where we have the energy subsidy reform facility, and as you know, of course, that the imbalance between fossil fuels and other more clean forms of energy is further exacerbated because of the uneconomic pricing of fossil fuel energy in a lot of cases. And so this facility has been quite successful in helping countries move away in a sustainable manner while protecting the poor and the vulnerable to move away from pricing subsidies. Similarly, we have the supporting coal regions and transition window in that, which is again a pretty important window. We are supporting the transition away from coal power plants and coal mines in tandem with the support for clean energy resources. And then energy data and analytics. I hope you can see it. It's in my screen. It's below vision, but it's a very important and a very powerful program for us. We do a lot of data analytics. It's all publicly available. We have renewable resource mapping, for instance, which has become quite a flagship resource. And so if you go to energydata.info, if I've got that right, energydata.info, you can see, you can access a lot of the resources there. So that's the architecture of our current plan. And this is a snapshot, and it's a very detailed one. It's a very busy slide, but don't worry, I'll at least I'll highlight the main elements. This is where we are right now at the midterm in terms of the results that have been achieved. And you can see some of the numbers are pretty serious. On the right side, you can see that we have already helped mobilize World Bank financing of about $11 billion. So think about it. We have $360 million so far deployed in the first 2 years of our plan, and we've already begun. We've already leveraged $11 billion. So that's the kind of scale of impact that we're talking about. And of course, that a large focus is on access. You can see almost 20 million people are expected to gain access as a result of our work. 3.1 gigawatts of renewable energy so far expected to be installed, and this is increasing on a daily basis, more or less. And the climate impact is pretty stark: 40 million metric tons nearly of emissions avoided. So it's a pretty powerful program with very strong results. And of course, I cannot say this enough. None of this would be possible without our partners, Austria and all the other countries and partners that we work with. So that's essentially a snapshot. I'll leave that there for a second. A couple of things I wanted to highlight. One is the energy storage program that I mentioned earlier. That was a program which was, again, when it started 2 years ago, it was breathtaking in its ambition. The World Bank president at that time announced this program at one of the annual sort of events, and he laid out an ambition of $2 billion worth of scale up of financing from that program. And I think we have reached about slightly less than half of that so far. But as you know, battery storage is a very new technology. It's still sort of evolving as we speak. But a lot of countries have been able to use our support to start their battery storage programs. As you know, battery storage, one of the key elements of it, one of the key benefits of it is the ability to provide a little more predictability to renewable energy, to variable renewables. So once you combine those, they become a little more dispatchable. So that's a big program for us. Another really important program that we've started, it's the last bullet, the Energizing Renewable program. And that's particularly successful because for the first time, it's been able to leverage about $280 million from the Green Climate Facility and Green Climate Fund. So that's enabled us to provide large-scale support combined with the World Bank's own lending. And this combines together in an initiative called the Sustainable Renewables Risk Mitigation Initiative, SRMI. That's already begun supporting a large number of countries in helping them scale up their renewable resources. And we expect about 2 gigawatts of renewables to be supported through this program, 1 gigawatt hour worth of battery storage. So these are sort of the flagship programs that we have ongoing, among many others. Clean cooling, of course, is another one. The Clean Cooking Fund is another. So we have several very large programs that are quite effective. And the hydrogen facility that I talked to you about, we are thinking of scaling it up in the same fashion if we can. Of course, this is still a concept in our minds right now. We will discuss it with the consultative group next week to see their interest. But we do feel that green hydrogen is possible, certainly possible, and requires a lot of support, both in terms of the supply side of it, but also on the demand side. I think it's something that the time has come. So we really want to focus on it, deepen our focus on it. Okay, let's move on. So takes a couple of seconds. This is an outdated slide. I was supposed to update it, but I've covered quite a bit of it. We've already talked about the various initiatives that we've launched. The one aspect that I do want to mention here is the COVID-19, the ESMAP World Bank support for COVID-19 mitigation and to address it. And the ESMAP, of course, the pandemic hit us in the middle of our business plan. The business plan had already been launched at that time. But with the various partners such as Austria and a few others, we were able to, let's say, reorient part of our effort towards supporting the response to COVID-19. And we're talking about cold chains. We're talking about helping bring energy to areas which were badly affected, and so on. So this has been quite effective. Of course, it's been hard, and we partnered with the health practice of the World Bank. But that has been a very critical, let's say, reorientation, and it shows the flexibility that ESMAP and our donors have to be able to address emergency sort of situations. Just a couple words on Austria. Is a key donor, is a very important partner for us. Our current funding, if I'm not wrong, is about 2.5, is a little under $2.5 million. Some of it was preference, as I said, for COVID relief. And as I said earlier, it's a key promoter of our hydro development facility. I'll talk about it in a second. We received about, in the previous business plan, 1.2 million from Austria as a seed money. That's how we were able to launch it. So this is a little bit more on the hydropower facility. And of course, why? I think we all agree on the why, in terms of why hydropower is important and why it needs support. How we help is essentially in helping clients prepare projects better, and so that they can then be ready for implementation, for financing. And of course, in preparing, we take care of all of the various aspects, the design of the facility itself, but also all of the safeguards related aspects, the ecological aspects related to the river itself, plus being able to sort of understand all of the risks that are involved, and then be able to manage them better in terms of which agency or which institution is best placed to manage that risk well. And this becomes important, particularly when you bring private investment or private financing. There are several examples of that happening across. And so this was, of course, the World Bank has been involved in hydro for a very long time, and we've learned a lot from that experience. And one of the aspects that we realize, particularly in Africa, for instance, where the need is the largest, let us say, or in Central Asia, or in East Asia or South Asia, one of the issues was the readiness of projects to be implemented or financed. And so that's why we are focusing there. And we've already been able to help quite a few countries. And our ambition is to continue that and deepen it further, and to spread the resources further to other countries. We've so far been active in East Asia, South Asia, and of course Africa. Plus, we've done quite a bit of work in the Western Balkans, which again, as you know, is a very biodiversity-rich region, and it's been a very valuable support to the team working there on designing the program, the hydro development program there. Very quickly on how we operate. So this is sort of a very simplified way to show our results framework. Of course, we've got, the main input is funds, but then we have our own resources, we have our own staff. As I said, we have 55 staff working in ESMAP, and they also work quite closely with the World Bank. So, those are the inputs that we use. And, it would be safe to say that ESMAP has let's say, the cutting edge knowledge base on energy that essentially we use to support the World Bank and our clients. So that's the key. As I said, we do a lot of reports ourselves, studies, reports, flagships, on all kinds, cooking, you name it, and we've sort of produced analysis and policies on advisory work on that. We do a lot of global events on various programs, and this is a place where we invite a lot of the private sector to participate, to help us share knowledge as well. So whether it's storage, hydrogen, offshore wind, any of the technology streams that you could think of. And then the intermediate outcome in many cases is the influencing of World Bank Group lending and activities in support of client country priorities, and country partnership strategies, country decisions, policy actions, and so on. So those are, you could see those as intermediate outcomes. And then of course the big outcomes are the leveraging of financing, the creation of clean energy, improvement in access, reduction in emissions. So those are that's the results chain that we monitor ourselves by. Okay, so this is sort of the broad areas that ESMAP sort of, let's say, or broad channels through which ESMAP operates. We have a very important think tank function, which and an incubator of new ideas. And some of these ideas may be prevalent in the West or in the developed world, but they take time to reach the developing world, Africa particularly, or the poorest parts of Latin America or Asia. And so ESMAP is able to incubate or bring ideas from the developed world to the developing world through our own sort of activities, as well as through the World Bank's activities. We do a lot of strategic advisory work. One of the new pieces of work that we have become very heavily involved in across the globe is country CCDR, and essentially CCDRs are country climate and development reports, where for the first time each of these countries, starting with the biggest and the most sort of globally relevant countries, the largest emitters, for instance, etc., they mesh climate and their development priorities, and they then develop their long-term strategy towards a net zero future. And so these reports have become very, very powerful. And just to name a few countries, where we've been working: Kazakhstan, Ukraine, Russia. Of course, some of that work has been impacted by the war that's ongoing in Ukraine, Turkey, Indonesia, Vietnam. So all of the India. So some of the big countries which are of global relevance for climate change, we've begun this kind of work, and it's a very in-depth work based on a lot of planning, a lot of policy work. So ESMAP. So that's how we can, that's the power of our work in influencing country policy. Of course, market development and financing, these to us go hand in hand, leveraging of financing, because we realize that we don't have the resources to solve all the problems on our own. So we perforce need to bring in the private sector, to bring in commercial financing. And so a lot of our work is in helping create markets, in bringing in large-scale financing, helping the World Bank sort of leverage large-scale financing, whether it's from climate funds or from commercial resources for, of course, for country programs. And in terms of markets, one example that I'd like to share is, and you may all be aware of it, is the work on off-grid solar or off-grid renewable ways of providing access, whether it's solar home systems or decentralized mini grids. And the ESMAP has led a lot of that work in Africa over the last 10-15 years, and it's becoming even more. It's going even more deep now. And with our work, with our help, not just on, let's say, the policies, but also on the technical standards, on the ways in which you can bring supply chains to these markets, we think that we have managed to create quite a market in several parts of Africa for off-grid products. And of course, hand in hand with that is bringing in large-scale financing, of course, starting with the World Bank, but also climate financing and slowly more commercial financing towards Africa. So I'm sure you're aware of, for instance, the World Bank Group scaling solar model. That's for grid-connected PV. We've had ESMAP has supported countries in accessing that model, where we do competitive procurement for large-scale grid-based solar, and again that enables private financing to be leveraged, private investment. So these are a few ways in which, these are a few channels through which we operate. And in all of these areas, we engage quite heavily with the private sector. In our think tank work, in our sort of strategic advisory work, we do quite a lot of outreach through workshops, through events. In 2 weeks' time, the World Bank will have its Energy Week, where all of the energy staff will get together, and we'll invite external participants. So ESMAP is supporting that effort as well, to bring new knowledge to the World Bank, and then help us share it with our clients. So in all of these elements, we interact quite heavily with the private sector, and we always welcome private initiative, new ideas, new relationships. This hydrogen program that I was talking about, again, one of the, if it does get, it does become that ambitious sort of program, then we will have regular outreach to the private sector, to developers, to think tanks, to private laboratories, people doing research on this topic. So we like to bring in all of the intelligence that is available and the innovation that is available in the private sector to bear to help our clients. And so we feel that the private sector is a key partner in our engagements, in particularly in this fight against climate change. So we welcome all of the work that we could do together. So do not hesitate. If you have any ideas, if you have any thoughts, please do reach out, and we'd be very happy to talk. Teresa, I think I'm done. This is just a slide to show you the various partnerships that we've had in all of the areas that we've worked in, and you can see some of the biggest names on that chart. And this is only a small, let's say, snapshot. There are many other partnerships that we've got. With that, Teresa, back to you. Thank you very, very much. It's been, again, my honor to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Samir. And I also invite Sina maybe to join us now if there's any questions for you. Also to the audience, now is the time. We have about 10 to 15 minutes left to type in your questions so we can get to them. Sina, I will start with one question to you. How often you talked about the your focus towards IFIs? How often do you revisit what you're going to do? Is there like a 5-year plan, or how does it work? What you focus on? And I think ESMAP is one. Maybe you can also tell us again. ESMAP is one of the programs you've been financing for many years.
Yes. Thank you very much. So ESMAP has been a long-standing partner in a program that we have supported. Sorry, should I do this in German or English?
No, English, so Samir can understand. So I guess we stick to English now. Yes.
So Samir knows that Austria has been a strong supporter and long-standing partner of ESMAP. We have, as the Ministry of Finance, an IFI strategy, which is actually available on our website. And I have to say that energy and climate change protection, water and sanitation, and even private sector and financial sector development have been our key components for a very long time. Actually, since we've had this strategy. The newest component is actually urban development. But since urban development also has items or issues related to climate change, energy, and making cities more efficient and renewable, they all kind of interlink. But those 4 sectors that I've mentioned in my slide are actually the ones that have been in our strategy for a very long time. And I think they are there to stay, because these are where our companies also have a strong suit.
Great. Do you know, Sina, about any co-investments with the Austrian Development Association or OEB that you're doing, that you're aware of?
The Development Bank of Austria?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They are more or less the climate change financing bank that we have. They do a lot of the core funding for climate change initiatives, but they mainly engage just with the private sector. They're not like with us, where we can engage also with IFIs or with through IFIs with NGOs or other partners. They have a focus on several countries. They are very strong in the Caucasus, Georgia, Armenia, and some African countries. Our African focal countries are also there, but of course with activities in Africa, it's a bit more difficult. It's also a bit farther away from our private sector partners. So Eastern Europe is usually, Eastern and Central Asia is where they mainly engage. They also have some programs and some initiatives in Latin America, but that's more on the fringes of it. But they have positioned themselves as more or less the Climate Bank of Austria.
Yeah, Thank you, Sina. I'm gonna have two questions now that I'm gonna combine for Samir. First of all, where do you, most of ESMAP's activities, where are they from a regional and from a focus area point? What you say is like what you do most and where you do it mostly? That's the first question. And then the other second question would be about cooperations with, for example, MIGA or IFC, so the private sector arm, or MIGA, just saying it, the political risk insurance arm of the World Bank. So those two questions.
Thank you, Teresa. So the areas of geographically, Africa, without question, is the biggest, let's say, concentration for us for various reasons. And in terms of the programs, the two largest are the Energy Access Program and the Renewable Energy Program. These are the two that are the biggest at this point in terms of focus, and they overlap in terms of sort of focus with Africa as well. So it also sort of is natural that these two programs are pretty large in Africa also. Sorry, Teresa, what was your next question? Oh, IFC and MIGA. So yeah, with IFC and MIGA, there are relationships at multiple levels. First of all, in terms of the engagement with clients, I mentioned the World Bank Group Scaling Solar model, which essentially has a very structured way of bringing private investment on a competitive basis for solar. And there, it's the World Bank Group entirely, in World Bank, IFC, and MIGA that collaborate. And of course, our support, ESMAP support on policy, on grid integration, on regulatory aspects, and so on, that comes in quite closely. And so there is that level of interaction right there. Otherwise, also IFC is also eligible for financing from ESMAP. So for instance, the industrial decarbonization window sees a lot of interest from IFC. And so we have financed, I believe it's 9 countries so far where IFC has started industrial decarbonization efforts supported by ESMAP. So there is interaction at that level as well. And the other areas where we sort of interact a lot with IFC is energy efficiency, buildings energy efficiency, cooling, and we see a lot more interaction now on hydrogen, green hydrogen, because that's a priority for IFC as well. So again, we are collaborating quite closely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You mentioned obviously that you have a lot of projects focused in Africa. How about South America? Do you have obviously, I guess, some projects or studies that you finance or technical advisories you do in South America? Is waste to energy also a focus area of yours?
Yes, so Latin America, South America are also sort of recipients. There is a, as I think everybody might know that the World Bank is organized regionally into 6 regional, let's say, vice presidencies. So Africa, actually now it's 7 because Africa has 2, Middle East and North Africa, South Asia, East Asia, Europe and Central Asia, and Latin America and the Caribbean. And indeed, there is a lot of work happening in Latin America. It's focused a lot on energy efficiency. In many countries, Mexico, for instance, we recently supported a program that eventually brought World Bank financing. Waste to energy is, I have not seen a lot of projects. I know that there were a couple of projects, not in South America, but in Turkey, for instance, where we supported the country to bring in clean investment funds for a waste to energy program. And that went from landfills, where you basically had methane and it was being sort of burnt to convert it to carbon dioxide. We, essentially helped them design a project with the private sector, which essentially captured the methane, and used it for producing natural gas and electricity instead of just burning it as carbon dioxide. So that was a very successful project. But otherwise, I don't remember others. What we do is things like biogas, and of course biomass. In biomass, it could be all kinds of biomass, including waste. but then we operate at a, we focus on the biomass side of it and or energy side of it rather than which type of biomass comes into it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's clear, Teresa.
Yes, I want to come back to the private sector, and you did mention at the end of your presentation how your outreach works. I have two questions. For example, would something you would welcome, would that be if a company does, there's the term of a brown bag lunch or a technical presentations, do you still do those? Do you do them virtually? Is this something for a company who is interested to present something, to present themselves to the World Bank? That's the first question. And the second question will be about, as you know Austria a little bit from your previous work and from your work now. We have a lot of consultancy companies. How do you work, or how would there be possible cooperations with consultants?
Very good. No, yes, we do have brown bag lunches. They have been remote online lunches, let's say, or breakfasts, depending on the time of the day, and we continue with that practice. And yes, certainly, if there is a very interesting, particularly innovative idea that a private company has, we would love to sort of think about it, and particularly if it aligns with something that, let's say, is a priority for us, for the World Bank, we would certainly look into it. In term, and of course, we have much broader engagements with the private sector, as I was saying. We have events that we have where we bring private, let's say, expertise to share with us. And so, from that point of view, if there are consultants or who have a particular focus, let's say, with a particular expertise, we would be happy to bring them to one of our events. If, let's say, for instance, just as an example, some consulting firm has an experience on, say, green hydrogen, and if we were to do an event, we would look at them as one of the participants. But otherwise, Teresa, as you know, and as I said earlier, we follow the World Bank Group's procurement policies for hiring of consultants. If we were to hire a consultant, we would use those policies. And if one of our, let's say, grants were to be used to hire a consultant, then again, the executing agency, the team that was going to implement that grant would be using the same policies. Does that answer your question, Teresa?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I don't know, Sina, if you want to add to this, but I know that consultancy, you probably know from the procurement side, and I know ESMAP is one of the partners who actually, if there's consultancy opportunities coming up, who does inform that, and they're channeled through, as you said, through the normal procurement ways that the World Bank has set up. And for consultancies, that's the website. And I'm happy to share this in a follow-up email where if you're not aware of that yet, where you can find those procurement opportunities. But yes, I have another. Sina, do you want to add something?
No, I just wanted to confirm ESMAP is actually one of the few programs that actually engages with us as donor partners, but also with the private sector, where they share terms of reference, is call for proposals, or any terms for consultancies. And we pass them usually on to you, and you can pass them on to the private sector. So in that regard, the program is quite open to engaging with the private sector. And I mentioned also my colleague, Agnes Trimmel, who is actually at the World Bank right now. We always have a permanent representative at the board, and if you ever come to visit, I mean, Teresa, you've hosted many study tours for our private sector companies, and we're always happy to host and engage with them when they come to visit, also in DC.
Mm-hmm. And one, because I'm looking at the at our clock, one final question, which might actually be to both of you. Do you also, because you talk about your strategy, the partners from ESMAP going forward, do you take suggestions sometimes from the private sector about projects? Like, do you ever have that someone comes to you, to ESMAP, or someone comes to the BMF, the Bundesministerium für Finanzen, with a project idea that they think would be something for ESMAP? Is that something you've been confronted with?
So do you want to start, or shall I? Okay, so from the ministry side, it's a bit more difficult and not as direct, because we can't directly finance companies. So the program has to be something that fits within the structure and the strategy of the World Bank or the World Bank program in that regard. In this particular instance, it would have to fit with ESMAP's programs and pillars. And if that works, we would first of all seek a cooperation with ESMAP, which we have in this case, and then ESMAP would have to determine that this is a potential project that could be undertaken. In that regard, we could possibly figure out something. You mentioned that, for instance, we have done the hydropower, we have supported the hydropower development facility where we have undertaken a sediment study, for instance, with the help of a professor from Fokus. And this was something that was generated out of cooperation between Fokus and ESMAP, and they together figured out that this is something that we can do. When it comes to concrete projects, it might be slightly different because of the procurement rules where we can't interfere. But it's always good to have a counterpart like Samir at ESMAP, where he can actually know what type of projects will be developed. And I think it's best for you to continue.
Sina, thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely accurate. Projects. So let me differentiate between types of projects. If it's an investment project, let's say somebody has the idea of a solar project. Now we don't directly implement those projects, and since our duty of care is to ultimately to client countries and so on, we take a lot of care to make sure that they have the autonomy, the ownership of everything that they want to implement. So we try not to promote any particular project idea. Of course, if there is a broader policy discussion between coal versus renewables, etc., yes, we do get involved, and we're quite vociferous as well. But in terms of specific project ideas, we stay out of it, because we do have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the World Bank's policies are followed, and that the host country is the owner of these ideas, because ultimately they are the ones who will implement. So that's at that level. Sina, just sort of riffing off of the idea you came up with on the sedimentation study, if there are good ideas that come out that on a study, for instance, a project defined as a study that aligns with or is consistent with the ESMAP mandate, the mandate that we've been given by the donors, we are open, of course, to new ideas, and we do take those into consideration. Once again, we would have to be careful about how those would be implemented. If it was something to be done with our own managed resources, that would be one thing. If it had to be done by, let's say, one of the World Bank teams working in the regions, then again, the responsibility is theirs. We would try not to influence them. Once again, just to be clear about the responsibility channels and so on. I hope that was clear enough, Teresa. I know we're running out of time.
Absolutely. No, we're running out of time, and I wanted to say, if there's any more question, I see there's like 1 or 2 more questions coming in. We will take those offline and answer them after the webinar via email. So fear not, you will get an answer to your questions. And also, if you have any questions, obviously, please get in contact with us, and we can still answer those questions after the webinar. So I want to thank you, Sina and Samir, for taking the time today and being with us for your presentation and answering the questions. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to further webinars. As we have announced, we're going to do 2 more before the summer, and you will hear about them and get an invitation. I want to thank both of you, thank our audience for being with us today, and have a good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, and stay healthy, stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.